أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، وصلى الله على سيدنا وحبيب قلوبنا وشفيع نفوسنا أبا القاسم محمد. الله وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين، لا سيما بقية الله روحي وأرواح العالمين لتراب مقدمه الفداء. أما بعد، يقول الله في محكم كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وما محمد إلا رسول قد خلت من قبله الرسل أفإن مات أو قتل انقلبتم على أعقابكم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Muhammad is but a messenger, and the messages before him have returned. And as soon as he dies or is killed, you return back towards your old ways. صدق الله العلي العظيم. اللهم صل على محمد. Inshallah, the discussion tonight will be revolving around understanding what was the cause of Karbala. And understanding within Islamic thought, you'll find there's a particular notion that comes forward and says, Al-Kaffu an ma shajara bayna as-sahaba. Meaning, when you're discussing historic events, if you find something within those historic articles that alludes to the fact that there is some sort of quarrel or confrontation between so-called Sahaba of Rasulullah, that you make sure that you do not mention it, that you turn a blind eye, that you try not to carry on or talk about the message amongst yourselves. This particular quarrel should be overlooked. Whereas then we find that all of a sudden when we look at Islam, people are of the opinion that Karbala was just an offshoot. As in, they try to paint the picture that Islam was beautiful after the death of Rasulullah. Everyone got along. They were all friends. And there was no problems amongst them. There were little things here and there, but nothing too big that you should discuss. And that when Karbala happened, and the grandson of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, Allahumma was indeed killed in the manner that he was, that it happened all of a sudden and not knowingly. Whereas tonight we're going to understand something, that there was a particular event that occurred that paved the way for Karbala to occur indeed. And that's why when we look at Islamic theology, we look at Islamic jurisprudence, we look at the usul in Islamic thought, you'll find even in the usul that we all come forward and say that we have one God without a shadow of doubt. And this aspect of Tawheed that we all agree upon, every single Muslim agrees. However, the understanding even in Tawheed differs. Why? One school of thought comes forward and says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has a physical hand, a physical leg, that he may be objectified, that you'll be able to see him with your naked eye. Wal-iyadhu billah. Another school of thought comes forward and says, La, there's no way that you'll be able to see him, that he doesn't have any physical features that objectify him. Nubuwah, you'll have a school of thought that comes forward and says that the prophets are infallible. Another school of thought comes forward and says, no, they're only infallible of things to do with Tanzeel, Quran, halal and haram. A school of thought that comes forward and says the Imams are 12. Then they're all from the lineage of Imam Al-Husayn, for example. Ali ibn Abi Talib, Hassan, Husayn and his sons. Other people come forward and says, we have the hadith of the 12 Imams, but their Imams will start from Abu Bakr and end with one of the Abbasid Khalifas. Now, understanding this, that even in the usul we find there's a difference of understanding. And that because of this particular difference of understanding, there may be different historical aspects that may be taken, spread. And there may be historical aspects that are covered up to hide particular truths. Now the question now is, this is a topic that is very, very sensitive. Now understanding when we speak about the topic that we're going to speak about tonight, we have to do it with delicacy. The way that we need to speak about differences within Islamic thought is a manner where we have to be respectful of the other party. We have to be understanding of their particular stances, as well as never backing down from our particular stance. Over time, we'll find, under the banner of unity, under the banner of do not cause any friction, under the banner of we don't want any trouble, you'll find that the truths that we solidify our beliefs are not told. When it comes to Fatimiyya, as an example, if we do not showcase what occurred to the door of Fatima al-Zahra under these particular banners, when it comes to the next generation and the generation after, don't be surprised if someone comes and asks, how was Fatima al-Zahra killed? And someone will do, like, we're not sure. Maybe she fell from the rooftop and died. Who knows? Why? Because over time, people are like, don't speak about it. Don't mention names. Don't say the realities of things. No. There is a need for us to speak the truth that solidify our beliefs, that make us who we are. However, the manner in which we speak needs to be respectful, needs to be academic, needs to bring facts forward that we rely upon, in order for us to solidify our beliefs and indeed preach it to the next generation so they may have a solid belief as well. Now, understanding this, tonight the discussion will revolve around why Karbala happened, what caused Karbala, what deviation from the correct path of Rasulullah led towards Karbala occurring. Now, understandably, we understand that only a few weeks ago we celebrated Eid al-Ghadir, where we believe that the religion was completed there and then. In Surah Al-Ma'idah verse 3, Allah clearly says, اليوم أكملت لكم دينكم وأتممت عليكم نعمتي ورضيت لكم الإسلام دينا. I've completed for you the religion with the appointment of Ali ibn Abi Talib as a protector and a safeguard for this religion. Now, tonight's discussion, we believe that there was a leadership that was appointed. The other school of thought come forward and say there was no leadership appointed. Therefore, they take it amongst themselves to appoint a leader. Tonight's discussion, the first thing that we want to speak about tonight is what entitles a person, or what characteristics should a person have to become an Islamic leader. As in, if Rasulullah, as they say, did not appoint a leader, which characteristics should we look for in a personality in Islam at the time to be at the forefront of leadership for the Muslim community? Secondly, we want to look at the event that they utilized to appoint Abu Bakr as the first Khalifa. As in, many of us would understand, Saqifah is the event in which Abu Bakr was appointed as a leader. But many of our youth, when you ask them what occurred in Saqifah, how did Saqifah happen? Under what circumstances was Saqifah? Where was Rasulullah? Had he died? Was he being washed? Had he been buried? That they already appointed someone? Where was Amir al-Mu'mineen in this situation? All these questions we need answers to. Number 3, we want to look at this particular notion. We have a notion saying that Rasulullah comes forward and states that hold on to 2 weighty things. Kitabullah wa itrati ahl bayti. Ma in tamassaktum bihi lan tadhillu ba'di abada. Hold on to 2 weighty things. The Quran and my Ahlulbayt. If you hold on to these 2, that you will never go astray after me. Now, understanding very well with the proofs that this is the hadith that is found in our books and other books in Islamic thought. Now, there is a tradition that's mentioned, the other school of thought, that says no, Rasulullah doesn't say itrati. He says sunnati. Taking this, we want to put it under the microscope tonight in order for us to analyze. When they say Kitabullah wa sunnati, did they actually follow the sunnah as they proclaimed? Or were there things that occurred that you put a question mark as to did they follow the sunnah or did they put the sunnah aside? Number 4, when we begin to analyze these particular events, there is a question that every one of us has in their minds. If Amir al-Mu'mineen was on the truth, and we understand Ali ibn Abi Talib was the rightful heir to Rasulullah, why is it with the bravery and the strength that Amir al-Mu'mineen possessed on the battlefield did he not go out and fight? There's many answers, but I want to bring one and shed a light on an aspect from the Holy Quran in order for us to see the level of wisdom of Amir al-Mu'mineen. And finally, we want to end with the 5th point, where we discuss a comparison between Amir al-Mu'mineen and the brother of Musa known as Haroon. What can we learn from this comparison to understand what occurred to Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib, and indeed how the way for Karbala to occur was paved then and there? And we want to take a moment from the 10th of Muharram, a particular statement that Imam al-Husayn states in Karbala that showcases to us who was the reason behind Karbala occurring in the first place. So inshallah, it's a very fruitful topic for tonight, but one that really needs each and every one of your attention tonight, inshallah, as it's very detailed and content heavy. But inshallah, at the conclusion, we'll understand how Karbala was prescribed years before. So inshallah, we can start the majlis by first blessing it with 3 of your loudest salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Bismillah. Allah. Allah. Leadership. When we look at leadership, we ask the question, leaders prior. Leadership prior, you look at particular empires, let's say the Roman Empire, the Greek Empire. How did they appoint leaders? You go towards Alexander the Great, for example. On his deathbed, amongst the last words that he uttered when his generals were around him, they asked him, "Oh Alexander, how should we choose the person that will succeed you in leadership?" And his last words, "The strongest amongst you should be the leader," which led to 50 years of war between the generals in order to see who should be the rightful ruler. Now let's take this particular example, that the strongest amongst the Muslims should be the leader. Now many of us will come forward and we're like, let's put into the scales of balance who's the strongest, not necessarily meaning that who's got the biggest biceps or the biggest person that can bench or squat or deadlift. No. When you look at the battlefield, let's take an example. When we go towards one of the battles within Islam, known as the Battle of Khaybar. In the Battle of Khaybar, you'll find the Muslims, in front of them was a fortress. Khaybar fortress. 3 days, one after the other, you'll find that every time they'll go to try to open the door, they couldn't. Open the door, they couldn't. Then on the 3rd day, you'll find the Rasulullah has a particular statement. Look at the statement. He says, tomorrow I'll give the banner to a man that loves Allah and me. Everyone loves Allah and Rasulullah. Do we agree? Every one of the Muslims can say that they love Allah and Rasulullah. But the next sentence, what does he say? He says, and Allah and I love him. So you'll find on the 3rd day he gives the banner to Amir al-Mu'mineen. He goes, and as the traditions tell us, that no one could even move the door. That 40 people, in some traditions 44 people, were needed to move that door off its hinges. And you'll find Amir al-Mu'mineen by himself moves that door and throws it aside. So when you're looking at a person that can access the strength or the manifestation of the strength of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and use it to protect Islam, you can't go further than Amir al-Mu'mineen. If we're looking at physical strength, but hold on, when people come back from the war, they come towards Rasulullah, we went to jihad, O Rasulullah. He says, Ahsantum, you just came back from the minor jihad. They're like, what do you mean minor jihad? As in we've just gone, put our lives on the line. We're fighting. We could die in that particular war. Rasul says, yeah, no problem. But that is known as the minor jihad. Minor. Oh Rasulullah, what's the major jihad then? As they ask him. They say the battle against oneself. Nafs. So if you want to see true strength, you'll see which person fights against themselves and has control of their nafs. When we look at Amir al-Mu'mineen, what does he say? When the dunya comes to him, Ya dunya talaqtuki thalath la raj'ata li fiha. Dunya, I've divorced you 3 times. Then there's no return after it. And when you find Amir al-Mu'mineen, look at this particular strike of his. Understanding the greater jihad and the minor jihad. In the battle of Khandaq, that particular strike, look at this particular point. That Imam Ali is in the minor jihad fighting against Amr ibn Abdul al-Amiri. A fighter that's known to be representative of 1,000. So if he's in the army, you count plus 1,000 if he's in it. Because of the strength that he brings to the army. They used to wrestle with lions as a hobby. When he comes towards Amr, he's in the minor jihad. When Amr, as Amir is about to strike him, spits in his face. He's in a minor jihad, but all of a sudden it transforms him to the major jihad, doesn't it? Because he's fighting against himself. And that's why when they see him, you have the upper hand on Amr. We're too scared to move, lest Rasulullah thinks that we're actually going towards the battle. And you go out and fight Amr. You had the upper hand, but you never struck him. Why? Amir says, at the very moment he spat at me, I felt anger within me. And I thought to myself, if I strike him then and there, I would have struck him through my anger. And it would not be, that strike would not be solely and completely sincere for wajhillah. Wouldn't be for Allah. Therefore I waited until the anger left me. And then when I knew exactly what I was doing, I knew that strike then and there, after I fought myself, that strike will be none other than for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when you look at strength, whether it be outside or internal, you can't get me anyone within Islamic history that had the strength of Ali ibn Abi Talib. None besides Rasulullah. So when you look at succeeding the Prophet, if you're looking at strength, you can't go past Amir al-Mu'mineen. What's another issue? Someone will come forward and says, no, what about knowledge? If a person wants to lead, they should have the knowledge in order for them to lead the ummah. You need to know about the Quran, the halal, the haram, the sunan of Rasulullah, the sunan of the prophets before him, in order for you to guide the ummah towards salvation. I think it's already a losing argument if you bring Imam Ali into the equation. When you come forward and someone comes forward and says that أنا مدينة العلم وعلي بابها, that I am the city of knowledge and Ali is its gate. You know what's funny is later on people come forward and they say things like, Ali is its gate, but also this person is the roof, this person is the floor, this person is the windows. So Rasul, had a foresight. He knew very well that people were going to try to come to take something away from Amir al-Mu'mineen. So what does he say? Whomever wants to attain the city of knowledge, then enter it from its gates. Rasulullah says this towards Amir al-Mu'mineen. No one can claim. Amir says, in a tradition, he says, in the dying moments of Rasulullah, when he was on the lap of Amir al-Mu'mineen, The traditions say that he just spoke to Amir al-Mu'mineen moments. Just spoke in a soft voice. After he spoke, those few moments, then and only then is when Amir al-Mu'mineen would have that statement saying, علمني رسول الله ألف باب من العلم تفتح من كل باب ألف باب. Few moments he says, Rasulullah taught me 1,000 doors of knowledge, and from every door 1,000 more open up to me. Imagine the knowledge that's within Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib. Now, we're going to talk about knowledge in more detail in a few more nights. But if you're taking knowledge as a prerequisite to be a leader, again, Ali takes it. If you're looking at closeness towards Rasulullah, because as the claim comes, that the Quran states that the Quran refers towards Abu Bakr as Sahib in the cave, doesn't it? And they say that he has a great rank because the Quran refers to Abu Bakr as Sahib of the Prophet in the cave. Therefore, he has precedent. I said, my lecture tonight is not discussing this particular verse in question, but just a quick analysis would understand that if you look at how the usage of Sahib is in the Quran, I guarantee you, when you look at it, none of which is in a positive manner. The people that it refers to as Sahib, look at the people that were in the Sijin with Yusuf. One was drunken, one was... and amongst other examples. So Sahib not necessarily something that's looked at to be good within the Holy Quran's usage of the word. Secondly, when Abu Bakr is speaking towards Rasulullah, Rasulullah has a statement in the Quran saying, لا تحزن إن الله معنا. So they look at that statement saying that Rasulullah says, do not worry, Allah is with us. Says, but what about لا تحزن if Rasulullah أمر بالمعروف نهي عن المنكر, yes? Enjoin good, forbid evil. Would Rasulullah say to someone, do not do huzn unless that huzn is haram? Or wouldn't he? That huzn, therefore, that person had wasn't a lawful huzn. It could be looked at to be a huzn of despair from the mercy of Allah. Therefore, he's saying to him, do not despair from the mercy that Allah is with us. Different discussion, different night. But just a quick analysis. But going on, if we look at closeness towards Rasulullah, the first, when the Muhajirin came towards Medina, and Rasulullah made brothers, took someone from the Muhajirun, someone from the Ansar, he says, now you two are brothers, share everything amongst each other and help each other grow. Until a moment where he saw Amir al-Mu'mineen saddened. He says, oh Ali, why are you sad? He says, Ya Rasulullah, آخيت بين المهاجرين والأنصار. He says, what about me, O Rasulullah? Rasul comes to him and says, oh Ali, is it not sufficed that you are to me like Haroon is to Musa? Except that there is no prophet after me. That Rasulullah made Amir al-Mu'mineen his brother. And that's why whenever we read in the du'as, أخي وابن عمي, don't we? So therefore we understand in that first level, brotherhood. Secondly, the revelation of chapter 9 of the Holy Quran, Tawbah, when it came, Rasulullah gives it towards Abu Bakr. He says, go and reveal it towards Quraysh. Jibreel comes down and he says, Ya Rasulullah, no, either you or yourself go and reveal that particular verse. Either you or yourself. Who does he send? Ali ibn Abi Talib. Allahumma salli. So in essence of closeness, Mubahala testimony, also a few weeks ago, we remembered Rasulullah, what did he say to the Christians of Najran? Bring forth your woman, or bring forth our woman, bring forth your children, or bring forth our children, bring forth yourselves, or bring forth ourselves. Hassan and Husayn, children. Fatima representing the woman. And as himself, he brings Amir al-Mu'mineen, telling us what? That Amir al-Mu'mineen is so engulfed and has melted and dissolved in my love, in my understanding, in my aura, in my teachings, that he is my mirror and I call him myself. Look how close he was towards Rasulullah. So you take this perspective and you understand in aspect of knowledge, in aspect of strength, in aspect of closeness towards the magnificent nature of Rasulullah. No one would look past Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib now. The question is, did he appoint him or did he not? Without a shadow of doubt, we understand that in Ghadir Kham, Rasulullah brings minimum 100 to 120,000 people. And he says the statement where he puts into context, أَلَسْتُ أَوْلَى بِالْمُؤْمِنِينَ مِنْ أَنفُسِهِمْ. Do I not have a greater right and a greater authority on the believers than they do on themselves? Everyone says, Bala ya Rasulullah. Only then did he say the moment. He says, فَمَنْ كُنْتُ مَوْلَاهُ فَهَذَا عَلِيٌّ مَوْلَاهُ اللَّهُمَّ وَالِ مَنْ وَالَاهُ وَعَادِ مَنْ عَادَاهُ. Whomever I was his master, now Amir al-Mu'mineen is his master. All of a sudden someone hears it and they say, no. It means friend. 120,000 people in the heat of the deserts after performing Hajj to tell everyone Ali is his friend. I'll let you decide. Let's take the example. Let's say that it meant friend, and we'll understand it now. Let's go to Saqifah and we'll return back. Saqifah, what occurred? We were trying to understand Saqifah. Where was Rasulullah? Where was Ali? What occurred? Saqifat Bani Sa'id is a sheltered area that people gather, that belonged to the Ansar. Remember we said Muhajirun, the people that left Mecca and migrated towards Medina, the Muhajirun. The Ansar, the supporters that were there waiting and supported Rasulullah's mission. So the Ansar, Rasulullah has just died. The Ansar gathered in the Saqifah, the Ansar only, to choose a Khalifa for them or a representative for them, known as Sa'd ibn Ubadah. When this occurred, you'll find one of the Muhajirun found out. Abu Ubaidah al-Jarrah finds out that the Ansar are gathering. He runs, tells who? Tells Umar. Umar sends a message towards Abu Bakr. Abu Bakr, it's urgent. Abu Bakr is like, I'm busy. He says, no, you need to come. So Abu Bakr comes. They understand what's happening. Someone's about to elect a leader for the Ansar. So Umar, in a tradition, he's saying, I'm thinking as we're walking there, what to say to them to stop this. And he says, as soon as I stopped and arrived there, I saw all of a sudden Abu Bakr holds my hand and he begins to speak. Everything that I wanted to say and speak and delve into, Abu Bakr said it better and more eloquently. When Abu Bakr arrived, amongst the things, it's a long tradition, but I'll bring the points that he says. He says to the Ansar, O Ansar, you have a great rank. However, you do not have a greater authority than the Muhajirun. We were the first to come to Islam. We supported Rasulullah before anyone else. We're from Quraysh, the closest towards Rasulullah. And you can never be in a state of being an Amir. However, because of your great rank, you are only second to us. Therefore, from us will be the Amir, and from you the Wazir. مِنَّ الْأُمَرَاء وَمِنْكُمُ الْوُزَرَاء. From us are the leaders, and from you are the vicegerents, or the vices. So all of a sudden, he already put the Ansar as number 2. There's no way that you'll be leaders. One of the Ansar stood up, and he says, no. مِنْكُمْ أَمِير وَمِنَّا أَمِير. As in, you elect from the Muhajirun someone that represents you, and we as the Ansar will elect someone to represent us. And Abu Bakr replies by saying, no. There can only be one leader, lest there will be trials and tribulations. So Abu Bakr goes on to say, then I choose for you one of these two. And he points at Abu Ubaidah al-Jarrah and Umar ibn al-Khattab. Now question. Ansar are all there. Only 3 of the Muhajirun are there. Abu Bakr, Umar, Abu Ubaidah al-Jarrah. 3. Who's given the authority to Abu Bakr to even elect Umar and Abu Ubaidah to the pulpit of leadership? Number one. Number two, why don't you bring the rest of the Muhajirun to elect? Number three, why were they even electing while Rasulullah's body is being washed? If you were companions and you loved Rasulullah the way that you claim, then you would never ever leave the side of the greatest man ever to walk this earth. So he says, I bring forward these two names so you can vote. And Umar stands and he says, no, how can we ever come in front of you? You have a greater authority than us. Take your hand out, O Abu Bakr, let me be the first to give you bay'ah. And you understand later on why he was the first. So he gives the first bay'ah. Abu Ubaidah al-Jarrah gives the bay'ah. Sa'ad ibn Ubadah refuses. Until the last moment of his life, never gave bay'ah. Ended up in being killed, by the way. Amongst the Ansar, they said, no, we were there in Ghadir Khum, that we know that we're not going to give anyone bay'ah except Amir al-Mu'mineen. And then you'll find, because the understanding there is what? If we say that's how Abu Bakr was elected, which part of that was just? Which part of that was Islamic? However, it just carried on. The question now is, was it an offskirt that just occurred, or was it pre-planned? That's the question. That's one we need to understand. Did it just happen? Or was there planning that went into it? Rasulullah is being washed by a handful of people, and at the leadership of them is Amir al-Mu'mineen. The majority of the people in Medina were with an army of Usama on the outskirts of Medina. That only 30,000 people were left in Medina, amongst them the women, the children and the elderly. However, in the last few weeks before the death of Rasulullah, or the martyrdom of Rasulullah, you'll find there was a particular qabila that was entering. This qabila was called Bani Aslam, if you want to read up on them. They didn't come as a joint group. They came 2 at a time, 3 at a time, 4 at a time, posing as people that were there to buy things, go to the markets. As soon as the Prophet died, look what occurred in the history books. They said that these people from Bani Aslam put on their war garments, and they took up swords and sticks, and anyone they saw, they struck on the heads and told them to come give their bay'ah towards Abu Bakr. Question. What else occurred? Everyone knew that Amir al-Mu'mineen was the rightful Khalifa at the time. What occurred also? They were trying to cause a lot of confusion. They were trying to cause a lot of dilemma, a lot of doubt in people's minds. How? In this very moment that this is occurring, who remembers the aspect when Umar comes out of the house and he has his sword in his hand, saying, anyone that says Rasulullah died, I'll strike with my sword. Rasulullah hasn't died. He's returned to Allah like Musa did, and he will return to us. So the people are like, well, hold on, has he returned towards Allah? Hasn't he? Confusion. In those very moments, before Rasulullah was buried, this all occurs. As well as the house of Fatima being surrounded. As well as the house of Fatima being surrounded. From then, 90% of the aspects that occurred was before the Prophet was buried. So that's why when you understand, when they went towards the door of Fatima, and you find that people are like, well, don't do anything because Fatima is behind the door. What was his reply? So what? Baba Rasulullah tried to write a will to write Amir al-Mu'mineen after him, and I called him delirious. He didn't stop me attaining what I wanted. Do you think you're going to stop me being the daughter? confusion, preparation. Why do you think that Rasulullah, the messenger of Allah, the greatest man to walk this earth, وَمَا يَنطِقُ عَنِ الْهَوَىٰ إِنْ هُوَ إِلَّا وَحْيٌ يُوحَىٰ, he says to you as a companion, bring me what is known as a pen and paper, let me write something for you that you will not go astray. Yani if Rasulullah tells you, you could be the worst person, the worst, the most sinful, but your Prophet tells you, bring me something, I'll write something for you, you'll never go astray. You'll be running to get something. And this man, what does he say to him? You're delirious. It's enough, the book of Allah. It's enough, the book of Allah. And that's why when we analyze this particular segment, when we look at this Kitabullah, we say itrati ahl bayti. Other schools of thought say no. Kitabullah was sunnati. Question mark now. Question mark. When we analyze the situation of what occurred after the bay'ah to Abu Bakr occurred in Saqifah, what occurs? What occurs? Let's look at this. Amongst the things, Abu Bakr says towards Aisha, bring me my chest of ahadith. So she brings the chest. She says, what do you want to do with it, oh my father? He says, burn the ahadith. The sunnah of Rasulullah is all there. The traditions are all there. Why would you burn it? Why would you burn it? If you're saying Kitabullah wa sunnati, why are you burning the sunnah? His justification was there's someone that's written within it as a chain that I don't think is trustworthy, so burn them all. In another tradition, he says no one is allowed to share or spread the hadiths of Rasulullah, because amongst you there's already difference. In the next generation there'll be more difference. So I don't want that to happen, so you're not allowed to share any of the hadiths of Rasulullah. Umar, afterwards, traditions amongst him that say what? Not only did he stop people mentioning the hadiths, he would also punish them. 3 punishments. The first, if you were to spread the hadith of Rasulullah, if you were to spread, that you would be prosecuted and jailed within your own house. Not allowed to go out, no one's allowed to come in. If you want to spread the message, you're not allowed to have contact with anyone. Number 2, that you could be exiled out of Medina or out of the governing area to areas which you do not like. So therefore, to protect yourself, do not spread the message. Do not spread the words of Rasulullah. And 3rd, you would be whipped. Amongst the people that came forward, and this may surprise many of us, was Abu Hurairah saying, we could not say قال Rasulullah in the time of Umar, because we would have whips on our backs. Uthman afterwards, he would say that I made it haram for anyone to mention a tradition, lest it was said in the time of the first 2 Khalifas. Question. I want everyone to really think about this. If Rasulullah, on the day of Ghadir, brings forth this verse, اليوم أكملت لكم دينكم وأتممت عليكم نعمتي ورضيت لكم الإسلام دينا. If Rasulullah says, I've completed your religion, and as you claim, he does not appoint anyone, doesn't that mean if you appoint, you are going against the complete message of Rasulullah? Because Rasulullah didn't appoint. And he says, I've completed the religion. Why do you find it in yourself to appoint someone if Rasulullah says, I've completed the religion? It's funny how the scales work when it comes towards Ali. As an example, you'll find on Abu Bakr's deathbed, he brings Uthman. Uthman is writing the final will of Abu Bakr. Abu Bakr is saying, in the name of Allah, and then he faints. When he faints, Uthman writes on, saying that I leave behind you in charge after me Umar ibn al-Khattab, lest the ummah goes astray after me. Abu Bakr regains consciousness. He says, what did you write? He says, I wrote that Umar should be the Khalifa after you, lest the ummah goes astray. He commends him. He says, well done. That may Allah reward you for writing. Then imagine us, we leaving the ummah without someone to take leadership and charge. Yani you have more of a love and a protection over this ummah than Rasulullah. As in, would Rasulullah leave it without a leader? But you cannot. In a tradition that Umar writes towards Aisha, asking her permission to be buried alongside Rasulullah. We're not going to the jurisprudence of that, whether it's correct or not. But Aisha says, yes, I give you permission, but I have a message for you. What's the message? She says, make sure that you appoint a leader after you in your will, because an ummah without a leader is like cattle without a shepherd. They'll go astray. They need guidance. So Rasulullah didn't think of that. Rasulullah didn't think of that. But you thought of it. The underlying element there is that all of a sudden when it comes to people's benefit, Rasulullah isn't where he should be. They bring him down to raise others up. That's not Islam. Islam, Rasulullah is at the pinnacle and everyone is under. When we find this particular perspective, we believe Kitabullah wa itrati Ahlulbayt. All the traditions, when they burn that hadith, when they say you're not allowed to share them, what do they say afterwards? Hasbuna Kitabullah. That it sufficed for us the book of Allah. Abu Bakr said it. Umar said it. When did he say it? In the calamity of Thursday. Bring me pen and paper to write for you something. What did he say? That the Prophet is delirious and it's enough for us the book of Allah. It's enough for us the book of Allah. So you can see all the difference and the contradictions that it has in itself. That they say just Kitabullah. Tradition says Kitabullah itrati. They say Kitabullah wa sunnati. Which is it? But we completely understand that Rasulullah, when he introduces the Thaqalain, what does he say? He has a beautiful, because Rasulullah, you have to understand, his speech, perfect. His gestures are also perfect. I'll give you an example. When he comes forward towards the orphans, when he's speaking about the orphans and sponsoring an orphan, taking care of an orphan, he says, Ana wa kafilul yatim. Me and the sponsor of an orphan are kahatan fil jannah. These two fingers. Kahatan, meaning neighbors, alongside each other. But one at a different position than the other. One's lower, one's higher, one's on the right, left. But you're neighbor, you're close towards Rasulullah. But when he speaks about Kitabullah wa itrati, what does he do with his gesture? Same finger, two different hands. He says Kitabullah wa itrati. Look at the image. It's showing you that it's two sides of the same coin. Quran and Ahlulbayt, even in gestures, perfection. That's why when you go towards Surah Al-Waqi'ah, within the Holy Quran, there's a statement, beautiful. It says, لا يمسه إلا المطهرون. Now us, with our understanding on the literal level, that the Quran, you should not touch it, lest you are in a state of wudu. لا يمسه إلا المطهرون. But ta'al, you come towards the depth of the knowledge. It means that no one can touch the inside of the Quran, the depths, the ocean which is the Quran, except those that are mutahharun. Only those that are mutahharun are able to extract the knowledge and the essence and the different levels and depths within the Holy Quran. Who are the mutahharun? Who are the mutahharun? Quran translates itself in many times. Allah says who the mutahharun are. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. إنما يريد الله ليذهب عنكم الرجس أهل البيت ويطهركم تطهيرا. صلوات. If you want the correct religion hold on to the Quran, and also those that know what the Quran is. So when you take this particular perspective and you ask yourself, then why didn't, if Amir al-Mu'mineen could and was able to and knows he was on the correct path, why didn't he go back and attack them? Why didn't he go back and take what is his? Abdullah, the son of Umar, writes a letter towards Yazid after Karbala. Look at this letter. He says, Ya Yazid, you've done a very, very wretched act by killing Husayn. Wretched. You know what Yazid replies? Look at this interesting statement. He says, O son of Umar, if I have done what I've done and I'm on truth, then I fought him based on truth. But if what I've done is not with the truth, and the truth is with other than us, meaning who? If the truth is with Husayn, then your father is the first to sin that sunnah. Meaning what? That the first person that opposed the truth was your father. Not my words. Letter from Yazid to the son of Umar. The first to do this was your father. Amir al-Mu'mineen could have easily gone out and fought. Why didn't he? Let's look at a wisdom from the Holy Quran. Yesterday we mentioned the story of Iblis. When we mentioned the story of Iblis, we said to him that when he spoke towards Allah, he says, Oh Allah, do not kill me. I've worshipped. I want rewards. انظرني إلى يوم يبعثون. Leave me until the day of resurrection. He says, no, I leave you to the known day. However, you are from the mundareen. You are from the mundareen. What's the mundareen? First of all, mundar is one. Mundareen, plural, meaning there's many. Iblis is one. But Allah says to him, you are part of a group called the mundareen. Who are this group? To understand who this group is, we need to understand what Iblis was at that very moment. When Allah says to Iblis, go, I'm going to keep you alive, in Allah's wisdom, He's saying that yes, Iblis's mission is to divert. لَأَغْوِيَنَّهُمْ, I will divert them. His mission is to divert. However, because of his falsehood, anyone that has any inclination to him will be magnetized towards him. So the more that he's alive, the more people will be attracted to him, if within them they're impure. So he acts as a magnet towards all those that don't want the path of Allah, that want to go astray, that have that within them, that follow the path of injustice. Likewise, Iblis at a very moment saw the Khalifa of Allah and did not give the bay'ah to him with that sujood. Likewise, there were people that saw in Ghadir the hand of Ali raised, and they said, we're not going to follow or give bay'ah to that person. And they acted in the same manner that Iblis acted. Became a magnet to all those that want to be diverted away from the message of Rasulullah. Diverted away from the truth. You can imagine that particular stance. That Amir al-Mu'mineen's wisdom was, take the khilafah. Allah already bestowed this. I want to see how many follow you, and how many from the 100,000 that saw my hand raised would stay on the path. Handful of people defended Amir al-Mu'mineen. Handful. And that's why when we go towards the comparison between Haroon and Ali ibn Abi Talib, very sad comparison. Rasulullah says to us, Oh Ali, you are to me like Haroon was to Musa, except there is no prophet after me. Amongst the comparisons, not just that Amir al-Mu'mineen was the person that was supposed to be the person that succeeded Rasulullah, but there are more comparisons between him and Haroon. Amongst them, Haroon is known to have 3 boys, Shubbar, Shabir, and Mushabbar. Now, we understand Ali ibn Abi Talib Hassan, Husayn. Hassan in its name, Husayn, what it means is small Hassan. Hassan, Husayn. In Arabic language, if you want to do something called tasghir, you add that. For example, Nahar, river. Nahir, small river. So Hassan, Hassan. Husayn means small Hassan. Likewise, the exact same aspect. Shubbar, Shabir. Shabir is a smaller Shubbar. And he has Mushabbar as well. And that's why we go to the traditions. Amir al-Mu'minin, when he lost his infant behind the door, what was his name? Muhsin. In some traditions it says it's Muhassan. Like Haroon. In the story of Haroon and Musa, what happens? Musa leaves 30 days. Allah extends it, makes it 40. Puts who in charge? Puts Haroon. Everyone follows who? The Samiri. Everyone follows the Samiri, don't they? They all left the Khalifa appointed by the Prophet that preceded. And when we understand this, we see, look at the moment. When we find Musa returns, he sees everyone's gone astray, worshipping a calf. He says, Baba, I just took you across the river, saved you from Fir'aun. You saw the miracles upon miracles. I leave you for 40 days. 40 days I leave you. And you're worshipping a calf. What happened to the Khalifa that I left? So you can imagine, what does Haroon say? When Musa comes to him angry, he says, Haroon, I left you in charge. What happened? He says, Ibn O son of my mother, إن القوم استضعفوني وكادوا يقتلونني. Meaning that these people saw that I did not have supporters and they tried to kill me. And that's why when we go towards the comparison towards Ali ibn Abi Talib, when Amir al-Mu'mineen's door was put alight, he was dragged because of the lack of supporters. You know in the tradition, what does it say? When Amir al-Mu'mineen was dragged outside the house, as they're going towards the Masjid, he goes past the grave of Rasulullah. When he goes past the grave of Rasulullah, while your Amir is tied, he looks towards the grave of Rasulullah and says that very statement from the Quran. He says, Ibn He says, oh, Ibn from the Quran, إِنَّ الْقَوْمَ اسْتَضْعَفُونِي. That these people found me without any supporters. وَكَادُوا يَقْتَلُونَنِي. And they tried or attempting to kill me, O Rasulullah. I have no supporters. That's why from the understanding that we have, that without a shadow of doubt, that the thing that put in place what occurred in Karbala was that particular notion of Saqifah. That because Amir al-Mu'mineen was not appointed rightfully so, was not given the Khilafah, that they all of a sudden with that appointment made a whole new branch that diverted people away from the message. That it needed the blood sacrifice of Abdulla to return people back towards the message. That you'll find within Ziyarat Ashura, we read this particular statement stating, Ya Allah, Allahumma al'an al-mumahideen lahum bit-tamkeen min qitalikum. Stating what? Oh Allah, remove the mercy from those people that paved the way for the killing of Abdulla. That we understand on the 10th of Muharram when it occurred, he remembers this. But the comparisons that we draw, that because they gave bay'ah towards the first, that the door of Fatima was attacked. That we find the comparison between the door of Fatima being the first tragedy and between Karbala. Let's look at the comparison on one side. We had people coming towards the door of Fatima with flames. You'll find those flames were put at the door, and you'll find when going towards Karbala that they set the tents of Abdullah alight. That they would say, we saw the children running from one tent to another. Of them that were satellite and died, of them that were trampled by the hooves of the horses, of them that Zainab ran to protect. You'll find a fire in Medina on the door of Fatima, and a fire at the tents of Husayn. What else is the comparison? You'll find that there was a lady that was struck behind the door, and you'll find the Zainab that was struck in Karbala. You'll find in Medina that there was an infant child that Fatima al-Zahra would miscarry. Because of that infant child, you'll find there was a 6-month-old in Karbala. But that infant child might have been killed by a particular nail behind the door. A nail that hit the ribs of Fatima al-Zahra. One nail killed Muhsin. But what killed Abdulla al-Radi', that 6-month-old Ali Asghar? It was a 3-pointed arrow. How did it strike that delicate neck of a 6-month-old? How was the heart of Abdullah? You'll find in Medina there was a rib that was broken behind the door. And in Karbala, you'll find there were ribs that were crushed. You'll find Imam Zayn al-Abidin, Zainab would say, "Oh, son of my brother, I hear a noise from outside. What's that noise?" He would say, "Zainab, lift the tent for me. I want to see and I'll tell you what that noise is." She would lift the tent. He would say, "Zainab, that's the noise of the ribs of my father being crushed by the hooves of the horses of Bani Umayyah." You'll find in Medina what happens when Fatima al-Zahra is in her last moments. You'll find Amir al-Mu'mineen would say, "Hassan, Husayn, come towards Fatima. Tazawwadu minha. Come and see Fatima for the last time." When Amir al-Mu'mineen would put a coffin on Fatima, Husayn had no coffin in Karbala. You'll find Hassan and Husayn throw themselves on the chest of Fatima. When this occurs, oh Mu'mineen, oh Shia, look at what happens. Jibreel comes down. He says, "Ya Ali, نحي الحسن والحسين, remove Hassan, remove Husayn from the chest of Fatima." Why? Oh Jibreel, why should we remove Hassan and Husayn from the chest of their mother? He would say, "They have made the angels in the skies cry." Oh Jibreel, I ask the question, if the angels could not handle Hassan and Husayn on the chest of Fatima, how could they handle Shimar on the chest of Abu Abdullah? Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. وسيعلم الذين ظلموا آل محمد أي منقلب ينقلبون والعاقبة للمتقين. مأتم حسين إن شاء الله. يا حسين